The 648th edition of the Four Corners podcast starts right now.
This is the Four Corners podcast.
Elton ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. 17 seconds left. And he was fouled. Here we go. Lawson with a runner. No. The rebound. Hansbrough at the gun. Got it.
They were 4 for 24.
Hansbrough on a switch on Paulus. A deep three. And Green rips down the rebound in traffic. 4-on-1.
What a great job. What a terrific job in transition. I mean, you couldn't plan that any better as a coach.
Tipped away by Johnson. It's loose. Page. Johnson.
They're dancing in the aisles. They're high-fiving. They're celebrating. They're going bananas on Franklin Street.
Pass to Britt, 15 seconds to play. Up high to Page, gets a screen from Meeks. Page driving in on the left, high off the glass for two. Louisville with 7 seconds. Jones has it, goes left corner, Black's here for three. Back iron, 1 second to play, stick up, no! Carolina wins it! The Tar Heels win it! 72-71. 6 seconds to go. Pinson comes front court. Pinson to May for the win. Got it! Luke May! He got it! 0.3 of a second! Luke May gives Carolina the 75-73 lead. Are you kidding me?
Inside 30 overall. Love, top of the key. Oh! Big time delivery.
Here are your hosts, Josh Marlowe and Anthony Pagnotta.
Hello and welcome into another edition of the Four Corners podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. Josh and Anthony back with you guys, here to get you ready for Carolina and Notre Dame. That game will come your way Wednesday night, 7 p.m. from the Smith Center. It'll be televised on ESPN2. And we will address the fact that as I introduced the episode, my voice cracked. Hopefully that is not going to be a theme throughout the rest of the episode tonight. Two things: voice is still recovering from yelling about this team after the loss to California, and that cough that I was suffering from 2 weeks ago, it has returned and has kicked my butt. So we will address the fact that my voice cracked, but we're going to sit here. We're going to power through it. A little bit of a different, preview edition of the podcast coming your way. We will get you ready for the game with Notre Dame, but we gotta talk about probably the biggest thing around Carolina right now, and that's the push led by Roy Williams, echoed by former players to really hope that the Smith Center does get renovated. I've got about a 2-minute audio piece of Roy Williams that we're going to bring to you. There's a bunch of Bryce Johnson tweets that we can relay. So we'll start off talking about that. We got to dive through a Joel Berry tweet as well. He went through and rewatched the Carolina game against Cal and put up a whole tweet about his takeaways, and he didn't hold back against his alma mater, against his program. So pretty much a jam-packed edition of the episodes coming your way today. But we start every edition, as we always do, with the pod thought of the day. It's the day after MLK Day. Thought it was a good time to bring one of his very impactful quotes to the podcast. And one of those quotes goes like this, quote, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter," end quote. That's a quote that really pertains to a lot larger issues in life, social justice inequities, so on and so forth. But I think that's was a real great way to set up the Smith Center stuff. Obviously, this has been a storyline that we have covered on the pod for the last 18 months or so. Every time there's an update from inside Carolina, or whoever has covered the story, we've come on here to give our thoughts on the latest. And well, we got a pretty big development because over the last couple of weeks, there's been this movement called Smith Center at the South is what it's called. That's really kind of taken up arms and is really, pledging to hope that the Smith Center gets renovated. Obviously, the last time we talked about this, Anthony and I both admitted, as much as we'd like to see the current venue be renovated and you keep that the home of Carolina basketball, we did kind of admit, hey, it does make sense for them to utilize Carolina North, build a brand new basketball facility that is state of the art, but also be able to build an entertainment district around it, which is the modern thing from now sports venues. You see it in football, basketball, baseball, at the college, and even at the professional level. But they're pushing really, really hard. They've got a petition out that you can sign if you go to their website to make your voice heard about wanting Smith Center South to be something that really does take hold, take form. I signed the petition. My name is on it because I value it. Before we get to the Roy Williams audio, before we even maybe get to some of the Bryce Johnson tweets, what do you make of this movement that I was going back through the Twitter timeline? It's only a few weeks old, but it's something that, in the last couple of days has really caught a lot of attention on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, even TikTok. This is a movement that they're getting their voice out there. They're getting their message heard in a big way.
Yeah, it's not shocking. I mean, they wanted to be included in this, in some of the other stuff that was going on, but especially this. This was the big thing that they had their meeting with when we talked the last time about the possible new arena. We talked about how they had, 100 or more former players that took part in a meeting with the higher ups and everything that is involved with this move to Carolina North. And so I think that this is what they were ultimately pushing for. I feel like in their minds, they didn't have their voice heard nearly enough. And so they felt like this was the best way to try to get their voices heard even more, was to start a petition. And so my name is on it as well. I believe that this would be probably what's best for the program, especially if Roy Williams agrees that this is the best decision. His name's on the court, man. He's a guy that coached in this building for many, many years. And I still believe that he has the best interest of this university and of this basketball program at heart. So when he speaks about something like this, I'm going to listen. And I believe that that's probably the best thing that you could do, would be to renovate the Smith Center. Now, the thing is we've talked about this. How realistic is that? That's going to be the issue. Is do we actually believe that they're going to be able to, create either, a second concourse, which I know is something that they want to do. I don't know if that's necessarily on the table with them staying in the Smith Center. Would they be able to reduce capacity the way that they want to? I don't know if that's necessarily on the table with a renovation. And then you get into all the other stuff about, trying to build a bigger practice facility area, being able to be more modern with what your basketball facility is. And I think that we've talked about it, extending it into, where swimming and diving do all of their stuff at, is going to be very difficult. You're going to have to move them to a different part of campus. You're going to have to give them an entirely new building, more than likely, in order to fit what you would need for the basketball facilities to be up to date. So I think that's the one thing that I sort of wonder about with this is it realistic for them to actually stay in the Smith Center at this point? I'm the guy, I've said it, in terms of if they were to move, I would like them to preserve the Smith Center and basically turn it into a shrine to the basketball program, put, some markers on the court. Like if you guys have ever been inside of the basketball museum, they have markers of certain spots where guys hit shots. Well, you could do the same thing inside the Smith Center, and it would be even different than what you get in the basketball museum, because those shots would have happened at that spot. You could have where Marvin Williams puts the ball back up and in off the missed free throw against Duke in 2005. You could have that spot on the floor and say, this is the actual spot that it happened. So I'd love to see that. I get it. I love that the players have a voice, but I will say I do think some of the comments have gotten a little out of hand, especially with Bryce Johnson. I think the fact that he says that if you don't want this to be the way that Carolina goes, that you're not a true fan, I thought that was a little bit over the top.
Well, before we get to that, let's bring the message. I went and pulled the audio in case you're not on social media, you haven't seen the video message that Roy Williams delivered. It really started populating in a big way last night. I think I saw it during the national championship game for college football. It's about a 2-minute message. Take a listen.
Hello, guys. This is Roy Williams, that old guy that's still hanging around. This message really goes out to you guys who are sitting back trying to figure out what's going on with all these questions and people talking about new arena, not a new arena. I've given my opinion very strongly. I'm very much in favor of staying here in the Smith Center, remodeling, renovating, whatever we need to do. I do not want to go off campus. I was Coach Smith's assistant for 10 years. We had many discussions about basketball, about life, about the golf course, everything. But I do know during the conversation about what to get out of this building, the Smith Center, that Coach Smith wanted this place on campus. That was his wish. There's no question. And he even told me one day that after he was dead and gone, it was up to me to fight to keep it on campus. He told me one time, he said, "You're the head coach now. Whatever you want, I want." And I said, "Coach, we both want the same thing. We want Carolina basketball to be special, Carolina basketball to be different." And the Smith Center is part of that. I am hopeful that the administration really is very sincere, and I think they are, about looking at other options and not just saying we're going to have to go to Carolina North for financial reasons. North Carolina can be different. I believe in thoughts for the day. I believe in sayings. And I saw one at my house this morning before I left. Life should not be measured by the number of breaths you take, but by the moments that take your breath away. And the Smith Center and North Carolina basketball in the Smith Center has taken many people and taken their breath away by really, really special moments. And I hope that's where we stay forever.
All right, so there's Roy Williams' message. Since then, Tyler Hansborough has released about a 1.5-minute audio message or video message as well. Did not go and pull that one because Roy Williams' message was all that I feel like we needed. It's powerful. You look at the fact that this is something that it just tells you the visionary that Coach Smith was, that he knew there was going to come a point in time where someone was going to have to fight to keep the building that bears his name would still be where it is, and that would be where Carolina would play their basketball games. And so the fight that Roy Williams is now leading the charge for isn't just his fight, it's the fight of the mentor. And then you look at the fact that the thing that got me that should stand out is what Roy Williams said about North Carolina basketball being special and being different, about setting itself apart from what every other program is doing, what every other trend is doing. We're not those programs. We don't aspire to be those programs. There's a reason why there's the Carolina way. There's not the Duke way, the Kansas way, the Kentucky way, the Indiana way. There's the Carolina way. And that is what has led to the last 60 plus years of basketball excellence. And we can sit here and understand what Carolina North offers and what it represents. The financial gain is very hard to pass up in the modern world. But if Carolina goes in that direction, what Roy Williams is basically telling you is what he's admitting is that we're no different than the rest. We just become we just become another university, another program that's probably chasing dollar signs more than chasing memories and impacting games the way, or impacting lives the way that Carolina basketball has through the Smith Center. You mentioned Bryce Johnson's tweet, and you can disagree with what he says. I have no problem with what he's stating. But look at all the other storied venues that that exist that have been renovated. Like you look at Cameron, look at Allen Fieldhouse, Pauley Pavilion, Rupp Arena. Those are storied venues within the college basketball world. They're usually, if you're a basketball fan, they're on the basketball fans' bucket list to go see a game there. All those buildings have been renovated since they were built. So those are evidence. Those are living proofs that you can have a historic venue and you can renovate it and maximize space, suites, reduce capacity, and still make the money that you want to make and that you need to make. My biggest worry, my biggest fear is that Roy Williams said that he's made his feelings known, and that he thinks that this administration is sincere. If they are sincere, then they let the program do what the vast majority of the program wants to do, which is renovate the building and do whatever it takes financially to make sure that happens. If they don't, I think you're going to see, a public fight between the Carolina basketball family and the UNC administration, if you will. And I don't think anybody wants to see that happen. I don't think it would be something to where like the players would completely walk away, because this is the program that they're charged with carrying on the tradition of. But I do think there would be some friction that you just don't want to see. And so that's my worry, is that we're going to get to a place where the administration looks at the financial stuff and says there's too much money to gain if we go and then maximize Carolina North, and we're going to pursue that as opposed to renovating our current facility and keeping all those memories that we've created over the last 40 years. So much of our history and tradition are in the Smith Center. Like, yeah, you still have Woolen Gymnasium that you can go into. You can still go into Carmichael, but there's a lot of history and tradition tied into that building. And I think I can echo Roy Williams, Tyler Hansborough, Bryce Johnson, all the others, that they're worried about this administration turning their back on that in the name of dollars.
Yeah, I mean, you would expect that that's probably what most people are going to do in that administration, because they've done it already. I mean, they did it for the football side of things with Bill Belichick. They went in all in. They wanted to try to make as much money as possible, and that's how you end up with him as your head coach. It's going to be interesting, because if they choose to fight this, you are going to have another fight on your hands probably pretty shortly. We've talked about it here on this podcast in the last two editions. There's a good chance you're going to be fighting against them to hire someone outside of the family for the next hire, and that hire does not seem like it's going to be that far off. Not if the fans are getting their way with how things are going. If this is another bubble team and they're a team that exits in the first round of the NCAA tournament, then you're going to have a serious conversation about moving on from your head coach. And so then you would imagine that a lot of those guys that are within the program, guys that played, or Roy Williams himself, well, first of all, they're going to want Roy to have his say as to who should be the next head coach. And if Roy says, look, I want Wes Miller as my next head coach, or, King Rice or somebody like that, well, then what are they going to do on that front too? So they've got two fights that they have to prepare themselves for as an administration. That's going to be the really interesting part moving forward, is who do they listen to? Do they listen to Roy Williams, or do they decide to take their own path and really go about it? Because, yeah, I mean, when it comes to, the players having their say, that's one thing. I think especially when you have Roy Williams on your side, I think that really speaks volumes to what you should do. Again, his name's on the court, man. His mentor's name is on the building. So he has a lot of say as to what goes on. The one thing that I would say is that if you want this, this does go against some of what you have said before, which is wanting a better environment. So it's going to be the same environment as it's always been. They're not going to build a roof or build something special to sort of trap in the noise a little bit more. So it's going to be the same environment. You're not going to have the students around the court. That's not going to happen. You're going to have the similar setup where you have the one student section at the one end, and then you're going to have the second student section that's going to remain up top if they end up renovating. Because if they renovate, it's keeping the same seat licensing and everything like that in place. And so look, I'm for it, but that's ultimately what you have to accept if you are going with this plan of sticking with Carolina Carolina South. That's ultimately the decision that you've got to come to, is that you don't necessarily look at it as a big advantage to be able to go to a new location, or even just to rebuild where the Smith Center is at. If you rebuilt where the Smith Center is at, as far as I know, those seat licensing agreements and everything like that would go out the window, because it would be a new arena. You could still have it as the Smith Center, but it would be a new arena. And so I think that, it makes sense why the players want this. It's definitely a historic venue. I mean, and we've been down, in the bowels of the building and everything like that. It is typical 1980s. It looks like it's something from the 1980s, and there's a lot of historic moments that have happened there. I definitely wouldn't mind staying there and doing what some of these other schools have done. Kansas, Kentucky, as you've said, Duke, definitely, another place where they've renovated those areas and it's worked out well. But there is a give and take with this, that I think we had certain things at Carolina North that we liked about that. We have certain things that we like about the Smith Center. Now the question is, how is there a way that you can combine most of those together to make it a better environment, but keep this a place that stays, it stays as a historic venue on campus? And that's the other main thing on campus for sure is got to be a big part of it too.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say, then we'll move on, because we've got so much we got to get to. And it was kind of one of the many tweets that Bryce Johnson sent out. This decision was put on the back burner for every other program's facilities to be upgraded. Like, I remember this started back in the 2010s, where Carolina was aware that their building was starting to become outdated, but Bubba Cunningham had his plan where they upgraded. It started with the football stuff. You got the indoor practice facility. You got the practice fields, which are about as good as you're going to find in the ACC. Then they went to some of the non-revenue sports. So you updated the soccer stadium. You updated the field hockey stadium. Those got brand new state-of-the-art facilities. Baseball, whatever you name it, every other program got put ahead of Carolina basketball and their facility. And it's like Bryce Johnson said, when you think of the university, that's the first thing you think of is the Dean Dome. When people go to Chapel Hill, they don't go to Chapel Hill to go to Keenan. They don't go to Chapel Hill to go to Boshemer. They don't go to Chapel Hill to go to Karen Shelton Stadium. Then if they're visiting Chapel Hill, they're going to go visit the Smith Center. And so with that, you want to, first off, preserve all the history, all the tradition, all the moments, but then just enhance and give Carolina basketball what it wants, what it needs, what it deserves, which is a state-of-the-art facility for the players, for the coaches, and for the fan base to enjoy. And in the players' minds, whether it's right, wrong, that's indifferent. They think that is still possible at the current location with the renovation. And so, I mean, we got to see how this fight plays out. I commend them for fighting the fight. Dean Smith's looking down, smiling at his players, stepping up for their program and not letting decision makers that at the end of the day don't give a crap about basketball. All they care about is money, not letting them just have a say in what happens with the program that is the most identifiable aspect of the university. So, As we have for the last 18 months. When we have an update, we'll be here to sit here and talk about it. But felt like we just had to really address this because I think outside of Hubert Davis's job security, this has been a real big talking point in the Carolina community the last 12, 18 hours or so. Before we get to Notre Dame, did want to reference this Joel Berry tweet that he sent out yesterday. The former Carolina point guard, who's now a good analyst for the ACC network, a good friend of the podcast as well. He put up a list of things that he identified when he went back and rewatched the California loss from over the weekend. So bear with me as I read through this because it's pretty lengthy. Joel Berry wrote this. In the loss to California, there was a lack of communication, verbal and nonverbal, over dribbling coming off screens and on drives, lack of fundamentals, lack of active hands defensively, help side, help is out of position, lazy box outs that lead to second chance points, no ball pressure, which results in easy movement of the basketball, no sense of urgency to locate a man off made baskets that lead to buckets, lack of preparation when going from help defense to on-ball defender, which led to late switches, no stunts to give teammates help, getting hit by screens instead of getting skinny and avoiding them to get through, and then missed free throws, what I reference all the time, the most efficient shot in basketball. Well, there's a lot of Carolina former players that are in the media. You've got Joel, you got Tyler Hansborough, John Henson's got a podcast. He also does some work for the Field of 68. I don't think we've seen something this, damning against Hubert Davis as a coach, against the current players that are on the court competing. And you got to think Joel's been an analyst now, I think, for all of, if not the majority of Hubert Davis's tenure as Carolina's head coach, where we have endured this roller coaster of success followed by losses. What did you make of just how, outward and how forward Joel Berry was when criticizing his former program?
Yeah, I think he's pretty spot on with a lot of the stuff. Now, the problem is that it doesn't seem like he necessarily is pointing to the coaching staff. It feels like he's pointing towards the current players. And it feels like a lot of guys do that when they talk about the program and everything like that. They're putting it more on the players than they're going to put it on the head coach. But, some of this stuff really seems like it comes back to Hubert Davis. Again, we're talking about the lack of communication. That's been something that we've been talking about really since Hubert got here, where there are just moments where this team does not communicate on the floor, and it leads to a lot of breakdowns on the defensive end of the floor. That's what we're seeing right now. It leads to some of the issues that you're having late in games with getting your best players the ball. And I think that certainly is something that, we thought was ironed out. We thought this team would be able to iron out in the non-conference with the schedule that they had, but they didn't. And now it's seeming to cost them. Lack of fundamentals. Maybe that's probably the one that you look at and say, is he pointing to Coach Davis on that one? Because when you're talking about a lack of fundamentals, that's the stuff that it has to be taught by the head coach. Those are the basic things that should be instilled in his guys from the word go. But he talks about, lack of active hands defensively. I've said, we've talked about that, where Carolina just not trying to get their hands in the passing lane, not as often as they were early in the season, which is one of the strengths of this team. You've got the length. Put your hands in those passing lanes and allow yourself to have some success creating some of those turnovers. No ball pressure, which results in easy movement of the basketball. We've talked about that plenty, where there's just not enough pressure on whoever has the ball. They're able to get wherever they want to go on the floor, and they're able to make any pass that they want to make. No urgency to locate a man off made baskets. That's one we haven't really talked about nearly as much as some of the other ones. But, man, that has been a huge issue for Carolina. When teams are going up-tempo on them, whether it is off a made basket or off a missed basket, there's times where Carolina just does not even remotely try to hustle back down the floor and make plays on those guys. That goes into a lot of the players more so than the coaching. You could tell a guy, I need you to hustle down the court. If he doesn't want to do it, then there's nothing you can really do. lack of preparation when going from help defense to on-ball defender. Now, again, that's one that could point to the coaching staff, but it feels like, again, a lot of this stuff is really aimed at the players specifically. And we know Joel has said it before in recent years when he's talked about this team, that a lot of it, he does put a lot of the blame on the players. But I do think that some of this has to go on Hubert Davis for not having his team prepared. But I think everything that he's saying really nails what the issues are with this team, especially on the defensive end of the floor, which is really the area that they got to get better. If they get better on the defensive end of the floor, they can solve the issues that they've had recently. You feel like this is a team that can score the ball at a high enough level to be able to win games. It's just right now they are not defending anybody. I mean, even the game against Cal, we talked about it, the 1-2-2 zone or 1-2-2 zone, 1-2-2 trap, that ended up working for Carolina and got them back into the game. That was the best defense that we've seen them play. In the first half of that game, they let up 54 points to California with their base defense that they normally run. You've got to be better in your base defense. You've got to be better in whatever things that you're changing up to throw at them, and you got to continue to use that trap the way that that they have at times this year where it's been successful. You've got to use it a little bit more. So I get what he's saying, but I can't put all this on the players. There's got to be some blame to Hubert Davis.
My biggest question is this: is what Joel Berry wrote down being communicated from the coaching staff to the players? Is the film breakdown that I watched of Terrence Oglesby, where he pretty much highlights defensive mistakes by Caleb Wilson, Henry Vassar, and others, is that being shown? Is that being communicated from this coaching staff? The answer on the surface, that answer is no, because you haven't seen an adjustment. You haven't seen growth in these areas where Carolina has been poor for the last 2.5 weeks. We're talking about since the Florida State game. This is the worst defensive team in college basketball, according to Bart Torvik. That not the worst power conference team, not the worst blue blood team, the worst team in college basketball. So you're worse than even some of the scrubs that you beat up on earlier in the year right now, if you sort that data. And so I think what's encouraging, if you want to find the silver lining, all of this stuff is correctable. All this stuff can be improved upon, but there's got to be a buy-in that starts with the players, with communication from the coaching staff, and to see how this all plays out. I'll just say this: it wasn't just Joel. There was a lot of people, former players, that were wanting to make their opinion known. It shows that the frustration with where the team is at, with where the program is at, isn't a fan. It's not just a fan-only issue. This is a former player issue as well, and that's not a good thing for Hubert Davis once you start to lose the former players, because that means you're starting to lose the family. Let's get into this Notre Dame preview, because that's the next opponent for Carolina. The Irish, or with the scene set, Carolina 32-9 all time against Notre Dame. They have won 5 straight matchups. They are 16-5 since the Irish joined the ACC, and they are 9-1 in the Smith Center with 6 straight wins. This edition of Notre Dame, they bring with them a 10-8 record. They are 1-4 in ACC play, just like California was on Saturday. Away from South Bend, Notre Dame is 2-3. They currently have 3 players that are averaging double-figure scoring, led by Marcus Burton and his 18.5 points, 2.8 rebounds, 3.7 assists, shooting 49% from the field, 31% from 3. Jalen Harrelson is their second leading scorer, 14.7 points, 3.5 rebounds, 2.4 assists. He is shooting 49% from the field, 26% from 3. Braden Shrewsbury is their last double-digit scorer, 11 points per game, 2.7 rebounds, 1.4 assists. Although he shoots very efficiently, 42% from the field, 43% from 3. The thing they do really well, if there's anything that they do well, is that they only allow 8.4 offensive rebounds per contest. That's the 8th fewest in college basketball. Their KenPom rankings look like this. They're 75th overall. Their adjusted offensive rating of 114.6 is 108th. Their adjusted defensive rating of 103.3 is 55th. And they bring with them a net ranking of 74th in the country. When you look at Notre Dame, what stands out to you about this edition of the Fighting Irish?
Well, I mean, Marcus Burton is still a really good player. I think we thought this team was going to be better this year under Micah Shrewsbury, but it certainly has not been. And that's the main thing that stands out is that they've got a really good point guard. The thing is that, we've talked about it, man. One of the areas that Carolina really struggles is against point guards. Those are the guys that have had success, and that extended to the other day. Day Ames, we talked about it coming in. He wasn't the guy that really lit it up, but we thought, okay, this was going to be another guy that was probably going to go for over his season average. He did. And so Carolina's got to look at that coming into this game as well. My thing is if you're going to allow Marcus Burton to have a big day, you've got to take away everybody else. That's been one of the biggest issues for Carolina during this stretch, is that they have let some other guys really go crazy, where if it was just one guy, even with how good Ibuka Okori was for Stanford, if he was the only guy that really had a big day, you still win that game. If you don't let Den Smith go off from beyond the arc, if you don't let Agarwal have the success that he had the other day, if you let Day Ames have success, but John Camden doesn't have the day that he has, then Carolina probably ends up winning. You go back to the Wake Forest game, even in the game that they did win. Juke Harris has a successful day, but you let Nate Calmes go crazy. So that's got to be the biggest thing here. If Marcus Burton is going to get his points, and I think at this point we know that Carolina does not have a good enough defender on the roster to take him away. We thought that was Seth Trimble. We were wrong about Seth Trimble. So if you're not going to be able to completely take him out of the game, well, then you've got to take away Braden Shrewsbury. You got to take away Jalen Harrelson, and you've got to make this a game where Carolina, ends up having, a chance to be able to keep up on the offensive end of the floor. Again, even, with what they did in the second half the other day, still allowed this team to knock down 14 3-pointers. That's 4 straight games now that you've allowed 14 or more 3-pointers to go down, and 12 or more in the first 5 conference games to begin the season. That just can't happen, man. It's got to be better in those areas. So, this team comes in. They're shooting 36% from beyond the arc. That's as good, if not, it's actually a little bit better than what Cal was shooting coming in. So there aren't a lot of areas that they shine in. You look at the rest of the areas. They're not a great 2-point shooting team. They're not a great free throw shooting team. They're an okay rebounding team. They don't share the basketball at any sort of high rate. They don't create a lot of turnovers. There are a lot of things that go in your direction. But the one thing that scares me about this team is that they can shoot the ball from the outside. So, Carolina's got to know that going into this game. They've got to be better defensively in that area. And it's really just that simple if they want to find a way to win this game.
Yeah, it looks a lot different than it did under Mike Bray, but I think it's still the similar goal. This isn't a team that wants to run. This isn't a team that wants to play fast, but they want to spread you out and they want to shoot a high volume of threes. And so Carolina's got to be prepared for that. They've got to communicate their switches because we know they're not going to quit switching, and making sure that when they do switch, they're in these shooters' hip pockets and they're not allowing these guys to just step in to rhythm 3-point shots. When you look at this game from Carolina's perspective, the Heels bring with them a 14-4 record overall. They are, though, just 2-3 in league play. And after going 0-2 last week, Carolina fell from 14th all the way down to 22nd in the AP poll. But the Smith Center has been very kind to them this year. Carolina 11-0 at home in the Dean Dome. They have 3 players that are currently averaging double-figure scoring, led by Caleb Wilson, 19.7 points, 10.6 rebounds, 2.7 assists. He is shooting 58% from the field, 24% from 3. Henry Vesar is their second leading scorer, 17.2 points, 9.1 rebounds, 2.1 assists. He is shooting 64% from the field, 49% from three. And then Seth Trimble, the third guy to average double-figure scoring, an even 15 points per game, 4.1 rebounds, 3.3 assists. He is shooting 46% from the field, 30% from three. Still, and this is maybe not surprising because of how bad Carolina's defended the three, but opponents are shooting still just 44% from inside the three-point line against Carolina, the fifth fewest percentage, or the fifth worst percentage, if you will, in the sport. Carolina's KenPom rankings, they look like this. They are 36th overall. Their adjusted offensive rating of 122.0 is 36. Their adjusted defensive rating of 103.2 is 53rd. And Carolina comes in with a net ranking of 29th. I'll be in the building tomorrow night. I'll be on Media Row for us covering tomorrow night's game. I've kind of got an expectation of what I think the crowd's going to be like. What do you think? Because I said it after, I think it was after the California game. I would not rule out a scenario when we get to pregame introductions when they announce the head coach of the Tar Heels, Hubert Davis, for there to be a scattering of boos that could make their way around the arena. Carolina's been good at home. They've had good crowds at home. They've put generally 16,000+ people in the building on a nightly basis. What do you expect from the crowd tomorrow night after an 0-2 week out in California?
Yeah, it'll probably be a restless crowd. There's no doubt about that. I don't know if it's going to be one that boos the head coach. I think there might be, more murmurs. You're not going to hear a cheer probably for him, which is different from what we heard earlier in the season. In the game against Kansas, when he came out, there were some cheers as the season went along, and he came out for some of the other non-conference games that they had, especially after that Kansas win. There were more cheers. And so you thought, okay, the relationship's kind of being repaired here between Hubert and the fan base. Coming off of the two losses that they had on the West Coast, think there's a chance that, it's going to be pretty silent when he ends up coming out. Or, there might be some people that want to boo. I doubt there are going to be a majority of the fan base that'll do it. It won't be loud enough for you to be able to hear probably at home. If you're in the building, you might be able to hear some people, but I think it's just going to be select groups of people. I don't see it being a collective thing. I don't think we've gotten to that point just yet. And I don't know if that's where Carolina as a fan base is going to necessarily get to, because I think him being a former player, there are probably people that have more respect. There will be some moments where you'll hear people yelling some things out during the game that'll probably be frustrated with Hubert Davis. But at the same time, I find it hard to believe that you're going to get to the point of where you actually boo them. Look, we've seen, I don't even know if some of the other, teams on campus, if we've gotten to a point where there have been booing. Even Carolina football, I don't remember a time in specific where it really stands out that the fan base was booing. So I don't think that's something that this college fan base necessarily does. And so I would be very stunned if they actually did that tomorrow night. But like I said, it will be a little bit chillier response for Hubert Davis than it was earlier in the season.
Let's run through our keys to the game really quickly before we make our predictions. I think this game really comes down to two things. One, it's having a sense of urgency from the opening tip until the final whistle. You got to hope that Carolina found something in those final 9 minutes that they could bottle up and bring back to the East Coast with them. I think that was our hope as a fan base. That's got to be the hope of a coaching staff that, because the message should have been very simple. If you would have played the whole entire half that way, you would have won the game because you overcame a 19-point deficit in 8 minutes. So I think it starts and ends with that. The second thing, Caleb Wilson has got to be your primary focal offensive target from start to finish. You cannot have lulls like you had against California, where in the first 10-19 he takes two, or in the first 8-24 he takes two shots. In the final 10-19 he takes a shot. That should not happen again moving forward. He's the best player on the roster. He's proven to be unselfish. I mean, he's averaging nearly 3 assists per game as your 4-man because he's getting double teamed so much. So that tells you that he's not forcing things one-on-one. He's making the right reads. He's getting the ball out of his hands to try to create for his teammates. But, man, when he's got post position, you got to give him the ball. When he's cooking his defenders like he is with that mid-range turnaround jump shot, you've got to give him the ball. You're going to see some zone. He's got to get to the free throw line. He's got to get the ball there. And so, to me, it really comes down to those two things. Notre Dame is not very good. Marcus Burton is an individually good player. Braden Shrewsbury is tough, as you would expect, being the player of a coach's son. But outside of that, man, this isn't a good basketball team. This should be a team that if Carolina plays to their talent level, if they play to their capability, they should win, and they should win going away. But as we learned last week the hard way, if you're not ready to play and you don't feature your best player from start to finish, that becomes difficult in a league that's better than it was the past couple of years.
Yeah, you could find yourself in another close game. I mean, I don't know how much better Wake Forest is than this Notre Dame team. I don't think it's really by that much. And so that's the thing that you've got to be telling these guys is, hey, if you mess around, you might find a way to win this game. It's possible. There's a way that you get out of here with a win, but it's going to be very similar to what you did against Wake Forest. It's going to be difficult. You want to make some of these games in conference play easier on yourself. The games that you're supposed to win going away, you want to be able to win going away. And it's possible to turn it around. That's the thing, is that it's not an impossible job. All of these things are correctable. We heard it when we watched the video that Terrence Oglesby put up. All those things that Joel Berry listed. All of that stuff is correctable in season. It's just about actually doing it. But you mentioned the main thing that has to come from that game against Cal is you need to have that intensity level from the word go. There needs to be a sense of urgency because, guys, your season's kind of slipping away here. You lose this game, this is a quad 3 loss. And then we really start talking, how serious of a team is this? Are they a team that's actually going to be firmly on the bubble again? And even at that rate, are they going to be a team that's going to be able to compete in most of their remaining quad 1 games? Because I'm going to tell you, the thing is they've got a lot of quad 1 games still on the schedule. I looked at it earlier today. I'm going to pull it up here right now. A lot of these games are on the road, guys. So if they are a team that really only succeeds in the Smith Center, well, then when you have to go on the road and play Miami, when you have to go on the road and play NC State, when you have to go on the road and play Syracuse, those games are going to be difficult for you. We've already seen there have been a lot of difficult games or there have been some difficult games here for Carolina going on the road to Stanford and on the road to California. Those are teams that are not that high in the net ranking. Cal is 60th, Stanford is 68th. So this is something that Carolina, they've got to figure out a way to, start looking the part in these games that they're supposed to look the part in. I think it starts with this game, man. If you bring the right energy, you bring the right intensity to this game, especially on the defensive end of the floor, you can come away with a significant victory. But as you mentioned, one thing that you got to do is you got to feature your best player. Can't go away from him when it matters the most, which is, end of the first half and especially down the stretch of the game. Those final 10 minutes of the game, he should be the guy that's taking the most shots for you, not the least amount of shots on the team. And I look, there are other guys that probably are on the floor that don't take shots, but the thing is that he's got to be featured in what you're doing. And if they are doing that good of a job of denying him, well, then it's up to Hubert Davis to get a little creative with some of these things and find a way to get him free to be able to get where he wants to go on the floor. That's what you ultimately need to do as the head coach, is find a way to get it into your best players' hands. Even Henry Vassar, down the stretch of games, he hasn't been getting the ball either. So you've got to find a way to get it into their hands if you're going to be successful. We'll see if Carolina can actually do that here against the Fighting Irish.
Carolina enters the game with a 79.5% chance to win it. That according to ESPN's analytics. And according to DraftKings, Carolina has opened up, believe it or not, as 10.5-point favorites tomorrow night against the Fighting Irish. I'll let you go first. Who wins the game and why?
I think Carolina wins the game, but I'm going to tell you, I don't have confidence in them to cover. I really, looking at that, that's a pretty big number. And I don't know if Carolina is in the spot right now mentally that they need to be in to be able to cover that number. I think taking away Marcus Burton is going to be difficult. We talked about, having to take away some of the other guys. I mean, when you look at some of the guys on this team that are successful from beyond the arc, Marcus Burton, he's only shooting 31% from beyond the arc. It's really Braden Shrewsbury who's shooting 43%, which is one of the best marks in all of college basketball, and Cole Serta who's shooting 38%. Got to be able to take those guys away. I just don't know if I can trust this team to be able to do that, which is a sad state of affairs for where this team was at earlier in the season where we felt so good about them. But I think Carolina does barely enough at home to be able to get the win. But I think we'll be coming on here talking about a lot of the same things, and I'm going to be feeling that way until they prove to me otherwise.
Yeah, I think Carolina bounces back. I do think Carolina wins. They're at home. I do think the crowd will be behind them. And I think they know this could be a loss that breaks the dam. You lose at home to Notre Dame. I don't know if there's anything coming back from that. And at that point, the pressure on your head coach really heats up, and then you're going to be playing for your tournament lives pretty much every time you take the floor. I think Caleb Wilson's going to be motivated to not lose a third straight game. He's been playing his absolute tail off, just hasn't been rewarded with it with wins. Henry Vassar, has been really good since he struggled against SMU a few weeks ago. I think that trend continues. And I think, they get enough out of the backcourt. I don't know what that's going to look like from a minutes perspective, from a rotation perspective, but I think they get enough production. I think Carolina wins. And when we get back here on Thursday, we have a win to talk about, which that's the most important thing. Right now, I don't think it matters how it looks. Winning right now is the most important thing, just to get some confidence back in this group, get some confidence back in this coaching staff. I think we take a step in that right direction tomorrow. Give me Carolina at home to improve to 15-4 and get to 500 in ACC play. No matter what happens, we'll have you covered on the podcast and on the website, HeelToughBlog.com. The game preview, that will go up tomorrow morning. Anthony will have you covered with the recap as I'll be making my way back from Chapel Hill after being in attendance on Media Row tomorrow night as we continue to take you through the basketball season. Same thing for football. Transfer portal is officially closed, but Carolina can still add to their roster. They did so yesterday as they're nearing their roster limit. Go find out about the 2 players that Carolina added and what that means for the roster as of right now, moving as we get closer and closer to that roster being filled. And believe it or not, spring ball just about 6 weeks away or so from getting underway in Chapel Hill. So all that great coverage, HeelToughBlog.com for Carolina basketball, Tar Heel football. As for the podcast, you guys know where to find us. Everywhere you find your podcast, just search the Four Corners Podcast. It will pop up. There, we encourage you to rate, review, and subscribe. That way you don't miss any audio editions of the show. If you're a video consumer, best way to keep up with us, like and follow the Facebook page at Heel Tough Blog. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Heel Tough Blog, or follow me on Twitter at HTB_Josh. The second we go live, you will be notified. You can jump in and be a part of our conversation talking Carolina basketball. With that, folks, it is going to wrap up this edition of the show. I do want to thank Anthony once again for hosting with me. I want to thank you guys for both watching and listening. And as always,